Right corner, Davis puts it in play. The pass to Evans, tight, overpass. Bastianelli got a swing, played up and over by the Boilers. Then a slap off the block. Davis the pass. Poulter tries to dump it over on two. It's blocked. Covered by Donnelly. Strezak gets a swing from the left side. That one is dug out. There's a tip by the Boilers. Davis another pass. Strezak again. Cross court. That's dug out by Haben. Tight at the net. Poulter tried to stuff it down. The Boilers play it up. They tip. It's blocked. Stahl tipped into the block. The block by Poulter and Bastianelli, and Illinois wins.
Welcome to Illini Drive. We are here on this Friday talking about some non-revenue sports. It's a big deal on the bye week. Are you getting me? Are we having technical problems? No, you got me? Good. It's good. We got a bye week for football, so we may as well talk about some other sports. Peter Bailey Wells here with Will Gerard behind the producer's chair. Jeff Homer, co-hosting Ryan Wilson on social media, and talking to us a little bit later about wheelchair basketball. But first, we're going to talk about. Oh, I should mention, because it's Friday and we'd like to hear from you. Give us a call. 217-337-1071 if you want to talk, please. Yeah, please. We were joking before the show. Maybe we should start bribing callers to come on the airwaves. But either way, let's talk soccer, volleyball, whatever else we got. Jeff, you got something for me, don't you?
Let's open up with volleyball. I think that's where we should start the conversation if we're going to talk about the non-revenue sports. They're coming off the biggest win of their season, I would say, at number 10 Purdue, which is typically just a really tough environment to play in at West Lafayette. It's a game that we spoke a little bit about this week, I believe on Monday, and all indications that we heard from James were that this team was not going to step into West Lafayette and walk out with a win. I think they shocked everyone in doing that yesterday, especially because as of late they've been on a little slump and haven't done as well against the teams that are ranked nationally and nationally known for their skills on the court. So for Illinois to go into Purdue and come out with a victory like that is really promising now that the team's coming back home for a home stretch when they haven't been here in over a month nearly. Yeah,
we talked to Daily Illini volleyball beat reporter James Boyd. I believe it was on Wednesday, actually, because it was actually during the match. Illinois pulled out a 5-setter against Purdue after losing the first set.
First two sets?
Oh, I don't remember. I
think it was the first set. I remember we
saw
the first set when they lost. We're like, oh, well,
that's right.
Purdue's got to take care of business.
It was going on, right. It was going on during our show, and Illinois dropped the first set. They picked up, so Illinois won sets 2 and 3 and 5, making them 8 and 4. This was a team ranked in the top 25, number 14 at the beginning of the year. So they have the potential to beat those teams. But like Jeff mentioned, they kind of struggled in a Pac-12 swing they had earlier this year against some top 25 teams, Colorado, Stanford, Oregon. But, with a win over Purdue, they play again tomorrow at Rutgers. You're going to be doing play-by-play for that game?
No, I will be doing color. So we have the game tomorrow. Rutgers have been on a 9-match losing streak.
Okay. That's an easier matchup than number 10.
Well, I would say so, yeah. I think with Illinois, they just had a tough time starting the season because they were adjusting to play without Jocelyn Burks.
Right.
So it took a little bit to learn their game plan and strategy, and now that they're on this good winning streak, and they had a good signature win over Penn State, maybe we'll see a different team now.
Yeah, it's worth noting. Illinois plays undefeated, reigning national champion Nebraska. No longer undefeated?
No. I'm shaking my head in disbelief.
Oh, Jeff's shaking his head at me, and I was worried I was wrong. No, number one undefeated reigning national champion Nebraska next Wednesday for Illinois, where they try to break the sound barrier. You're looking discouraged, Jeff. You think it's a loss?
Well, that's the game the Illini certainly have to circle on their schedule,
right.
And that's why they need a good performance tomorrow, I think, against Rutgers. As Ryan alluded to a little bit, Rutgers should not be that strong of an opponent for Illinois. They're 4-10 this season, 0-1 to start off in Big Ten play. Right. This should be a tune-up game for the Illini coming off a big win, just to fix some things, work on a couple of mistakes that they maybe have made against Purdue, and really focus on a game plan now moving forward against a tough team like Nebraska, who who will be coming into town next week. It's a scary opponent, Peter. This is a team that Illinois struggles against every year. It's the one positive that I will say is that they'll have them at home at Huff Hall with Illinois night, so that will be a positive for Illinois' side. But Nebraska's a very tough team. They proved it last year, winning the national title.
If I could just add a little nugget of information to what you were saying there. Rutgers have been in the Big Ten for 3 years now. They've won only one conference match.
Wow, in volleyball. Wow.
So, is Rutgers just bad in every sport then?
I don't know. No, they're good at some stuff. What is Rutgers? Maybe after the break during the break we'll try to figure out what Rutgers is good at. I don't
Apparently
know.
for basketball, for men's basketball, they can compete with Illinois, so they got to be decent at that. They're good at women's soccer. Last year, they were one of the higher ranked teams in the nation for women's soccer.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Yeah. I mean, you could argue Rutgers can lay claim to the very first college football game ever, 1869 Princeton-Rutgers. So there's, I don't know, that's their biggest accomplishment. Anyway,
and they were good at football a decade ago.
Yeah, well, right. They were good when they, right, exactly. And then their coach was it? They have a coach scandal, or did they?
They did for basketball.
They did for basketball. Anyway, we mentioned women's soccer in there. That's sort of the other main draw of the fall for Illinois sports, non-football wise. Jeff, I know you're plugged into things soccer wise. What's the status of that team right now?
They're having a really disappointing season, I would say, to say the least, so far, especially into Big Ten play now where the team stands. They're coming off a tough loss yesterday at Maryland. They lost 1-3, and they're 3-8 now overall as a team, and really their biggest struggles all season long have been on the offensive end. They haven't been able to score enough goals to compete with their opponents. Before the game against Maryland, where they put up just one goal, they hadn't scored in their previous 2 games, and as a whole, they've only scored 9 goals the entire season.
Yeah, looking at box scores, 4 of their last 6 matches, they've been blanked. And then they sandwiched in there. They sandwiched in a 1-0 win over Evansville and a 3-1 loss to Maryland, like you mentioned. Is it a Jocelyn Burks thing? I mean, is it you lose your program's all-time scorer, and you lose? I mean, they even struggled to score last year though with her. So is it something about the It's tough to know whether that's a system thing, if that's a personnel thing.
Well, the Illini legend. You meant to say is Janelle Flaws, not Jocelyn Burks.
Wow. I was thinking Jocelyn Burks did graduate.
I thought you were, making a comparison.
You're correct.
I was
still in the volleyball.
She's a 3-time All-American.
Janelle, Jocelyn, Flaws, Burks, something about that was okay.
But Peter, you
talk
bring
about
up a good
Janelle
point.
Flaws. Yeah, talk about.
You bring up a good point. I don't think the team is necessarily missing her. They did have, I believe, 10 or 11 seniors come back this year because of a redshirt purpose. So they do have a lot of age on their team.
Okay.
So I don't think losing someone like Janelle is the reason why they can't score a goal. I think they're more so trying to figure out how to use the talent they have, especially when it comes to an offense. Yeah. And they really just haven't connected when it matters most inside that box. No one's been able to finish off that final strike to put it in the net.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out, you're listening to Illini Drive, brought to you by, this is on WPG 107.1, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1. It's fightingillini.com or 1-866-ILLINI-1 for more ticket information. And as we talk about, the non-revenue or Olympic or alternate, whatever you want to call them, sports that aren't football and basketball, it's worth, mentioning the golf team. Looks like they're just as good as ever. Men's golf is, top-ranked team in the country and always really, really good and always got their, All-Americans prepared. Tennis, men's tennis is clicking along. Women's tennis is not really quite gotten started yet. But it feels like it's been a quieter fall, and I know that a lot of the football chaos that we had last year doesn't exist, certainly, but it feels like a quieter fall.
I agree with you. There does not
last
seem
year.
like there's a lot of Illinois action to follow. And
Maybe we're still early. I don't know.
And maybe it's just the fact that football hasn't fed to all of our expectations, so we're still longing for something else to
Well,
meet
you did
those.
pick them to go 8-4. Jeff. Some of us
Hey.
said 5-7. But yes, I agree. I agree with you. I think you're right on. Really.
We all wanted to see a little bit more from the team than we've seen such far, and then
fair.
It does seem a little slow. I think once volleyball, like the Big Ten, starts up a little bit, we'll hear more about them.
Exactly. I think you're right on point there, Will. Once the volleyball season gets in swing, there'll be fan support during the weekend and weekdays at Huff Hall. That's going to be great. And just as a whole, we're rolling into the fall now, so you will start to see women's tennis, men's tennis, and even basketball start to make some
We're
time.
only a little over a month from Illinois tipping off against Wash U at State Farm Center on October 30th. So basketball is right around the corner. I mean, it does, as they say, time flies while you're having fun. It is worth pointing out that there was some Illinois success. There has been some Illinois success recently. Quite a few members of the Illinois wheelchair basketball team. Well, actually, there's 2 members. Correct, Ryan? 2 members?
Three.
3 members.
On the women's team,
On the women's team.
Gail Gang, Megan Blunt, and Christina Schwab.
Christina Schwab. And that's what we're going to take you after the break, is we're going to talk to the head coach of the newly minted gold medal winners from the Paralympics, Team USA. We're going to have an interview with her, Stephanie Wheeler. Ryan spoke to her earlier today. We're going to probably jump right into it, Ryan. So before we go to break and then we'll come back from break and play the interview. Any preface to anything about this?
Well, you can obviously tell that Stephanie Wheeler is still pretty excited. Coming up pretty soon here, the USA wheelchair basketball teams will be in D.C. at the White House talking with Obama and doing all that fun stuff.
Very nice. Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty exciting. She talks about the food in Rio and how and why McDonald's became popular.
Interesting. All right. Well, so all that and more. When we come back from the break, you'll hear Ryan's interview with gold medal coach Stephanie Wheeler. Stay tuned.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater. Ever so true. We love no other. So let our motto be victory. Illinois. Varsity. Fighting Illini football season tickets start at only $99. Secure your seats today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
I'm Ryan Wilson. Now kind of taking the mic a little bit, so I'm joined here by the recent gold medal winning USA women's wheelchair basketball coach and current Illinois women's wheelchair basketball coach, Stephanie Wheeler. How are you doing, Steph?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So to give our listeners a little background information on when I drive here, Steph, this is your 4th Paralympics, and you competed in 2 as a player and 2 more as a coach. You won 2 gold medals as a player in your first 2 years, and now at Rio, you won your first gold as a coach. How does that feel to have the gold medal in your hands now as a coach?
It feels great. It's certainly different than winning it as a player. There's different preparation that had to go into it. You're not physically on the court, training and preparing in that way. A lot of your preparation happens behind the scenes and, watching video and writing practice plans and game plans and making sure that the athletes are as prepared as they can be. But it feels wonderful, and I'm so proud of our athletes, and I'm so proud that we were able to prepare them to be at their best when they needed to be at their best.
Sure. So after your gold medal match, when you beat Germany, there's this picture of you clenching your fist and yelling at the ceiling with an American flag draped over your shoulders. Possible. Could you kind of describe the emotions that were going through your head at that point?
Yeah. I think it was a long 4-year journey to get to that point. For myself and my staff, started this portion of the journey in 2013, we completely rebuilt our team. We had very young players involved in our program, players who had never played on the international stage before, and there were some tough times during this journey. We finished in 4th place at World Championships in 2014, and I don't think that, other than ourselves, people really expected us to be in contention for a gold medal, which I know sounds a little weird since we won in 2004 and 2008, but it was a completely different group of athletes and who I think had different expectations placed on them. So, that moment of just kind of letting out the hard work and some of the frustrations of the past few years, and just knowing everything that had gone into being in that moment, people who had doubted us and people who had believed in us on both sides. That's kind of what that moment was all about. It was just joy, pride, relief that, we got to where we wanted to get to. So I think it was all of those emotions wrapped up into that one moment, and it was kind of cool that someone was able to capture that, because I think you can really see that in the photo that, it was just letting out all of that emotion.
Sure. So you talked a little bit about your journey to get to 2016 and your team, but could you kind of tell us how this recent Rio Paralympics team is different from previous years?
I think it's certainly different from the teams I played on, because a lot of the athletes are gone, different staff and stuff like that. So, and then from London, we have a lot of the same players, but I think it was a different culture going into it. I can't speak to exactly what, the driving culture was in 2012. What I can speak to is that when we got this group of athletes together, we said everything in the past is in the past. What we're concerned on right now is right now and what's going to happen in the next 3.5 years. So, I think one of the major differences was we were all on the same page with what our goal was. And internally, our goal was to win a gold medal. And so, our athletes did a great job of sacrificing personal accolades. When you get a national team together, everybody is a great basketball player, and quite often they're the best basketball player on their team. And we were really fortunate, and this is what, my philosophy is as a coach, is that, it doesn't matter who you are on your local team. What matters is who you bring to our national team and what role you need to fulfill to make this team the best it can possibly be. And so I think we got the right mix of players who are willing to give up individual, accolades and goals and whatever it might be for that common goal of winning a gold medal for our country. So, that was the goal straight away for us, was to get that mix of athletes, and I think that as a staff we accomplished that.
Sure. So when you were originally looking to create this team, what were you looking at, like, attributes-wise, as to getting on this team? Like, what type of players were you wanting?
Sure. So I think, if you look at it first from a basketball perspective, we wanted athletes who were very versatile, who could, we call them generalists, not specialists. So, they weren't just shooters. They weren't just great defensive players. They could do a little bit of everything. I think that was necessary to make our team. We also looked for players who were fast. We wanted to be able to play at a fast pace if we needed to. Players who, if they weren't great scorers, were willing to work to become great shooters and great scorers. And then players who are able to communicate across the board, along with some other, attributes that are, specific to the game of wheelchair basketball. But that was the sort of athletic package we were looking for. Then I think more importantly for us, we were looking for athletes who exhibited certain character skills and who were willing to work on certain character skills that were going to make them great players. Those who had the dedication to work sometimes alone between training camps, doing your shooting workouts, doing your strength and conditioning workouts, doing all the other workouts that the coaching staff prescribed, that we knew that they were dedicated to do that and that we could trust them. to work while we were apart because, we weren't able to be together all the time. Athletes who were selfless, were willing to give up their individual goals for the good of the team. Athletes who were courageous to put themselves out there to try something new and try something different that the coaching staff was asking them to do. So those that could embody those character skills as well are a big part of who made the cut for this team. So I think we're really lucky that we got 12 athletes who were all of that. And if they, lacked in one of those areas, they were dedicated and willing to put in the work to do so.
So in your 16 years being involved with the Paralympics, how has the Paralympic movement or even the sport of wheelchair basketball changed over time?
Well, I think first with the Paralympic movement, it's become a lot more visible. 2004 and 2008 when I was an athlete, my family couldn't even watch our gold medal games, or any of our games for that matter, online or on TV or anything. To now where we've evolved to they could watch it on TV through NBC Sports or watch it online with TeamUSA.org. So I think that's been a huge part of the movement is just the visibility of our athletes, both in competition and in media and marketing. And, you see our athletes in BMW ads and Coca-Cola and BP and all of the major sponsors of the Paralympic and Olympic Games. So I think that's been a huge piece of what's changed in this just Paralympic movement as a whole is the visibility of our athletes, to people across the nation. I think when you look at wheelchair basketball, our athletes are more athletic. They understand the nuances of the game a bit better because a lot of the athletes we have now have been playing since they were a kid. They've had opportunities to access wheelchair sports, since if they were injured early on in life since then, or, if they were injured later on in life, they were able to get involved in a sport program. And so I think you see that we're getting athletes now who understand the nuances of the sport, and so we don't have to teach those that much. We just have to teach them how to be elite athletes. So, and then they play a game that's different than what we played. They're far more athletic, or they want to play at a fast pace. So, the game has changed in that way a little bit too. And then I think the other place the game has changed is kind of what I mentioned before, to where we want athletes who can do a little bit of everything. I think that's evolved from the past where you had specialists, people who could come in and be dominant scorers, but, they really weren't able to do anything else. So those are the big ways that I've seen things change, in the course of my 16 years involved with the Paralympic movement.
Okay. So I guess as far as the Paralympic movement, what does it mean to you to have more media coverage of the Paralympics and more people watching and viewing every day?
It's huge. I think when you look at it from a purely sociological perspective, when you see our athletes compete at a high level, I think it changes the way that you look at the general public with people who have disabilities. You go from seeing them in a viewpoint of what they can't do. They can't use stairs, or they can't, be a CEO of a huge company. You change the paradigm that you view them through, and so now you see them for what they can do, and you see that they can excel at this level, so I'm never going to doubt that they could be the CEO of a company or get a PhD or, whatever that might be. So I think from a sociological perspective, it's absolutely huge, because when they become visible, it's not, you don't have to rely on stereotypes. You're not relying on what you've learned in the past about them. You're seeing it right in front of you, what they're actually capable of doing. And I think from a pure entertainment value, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, sitting volleyball, whatever, sport you're looking at, it's just fun to watch, and it's entertaining. And I think if you're a sports fan, you would enjoy watching disability sport, because all of the elements that you love about sport, the competitiveness, the passion, the drive, the athleticism, you're getting all of that with disability sport as well. So I think from those two perspectives, it's absolutely huge in changing the way that we see disability in our country.
Okay. So I guess we'll end with some rapid-fire type questions. Besides coaching in Rio, How was the food?
The food was okay. I think, having to try to feed 4,300 people is a massive undertaking. And so, what was really great is you had a lot of different options to choose from in the athlete and Paralympic dining hall. So, one day I think we would all kind of hit the Asian food, and then one day we'd hit the Brazilian food, and the next we'd hit the Italian section. So, fortunately they were able to mix everything up to where you weren't getting the same thing every day. And there was one little particular section of like a Brazilian barbecue place where we all kind of honed in on then where the best food was, and so we kind of kept that as our little team secret, and we would go there quite often. But to be honest with you, it was funny watching, because McDonald's is a huge Paralympic sponsor, right? And so it was funny watching towards the end of the Paralympic Games when athletes were getting finished competing, how the line at McDonald's got longer and longer and longer and longer in the village. So I think people, once they were done competing, they started migrating to eating McDonald's a little bit too. So, but I fully appreciate how difficult it is to feed that many people and to have to do it due to such a large amount. But, we ate pretty well, and we were able to stay fueled to be able to perform at our best. Okay,
last one. Is 2020 in your mind?
You know what? Right now, this past week, I've just sort of been enjoying the moment and enjoying, what this moment means for our team and for our staff and the work that we put into it. So, I've thought a little bit about 2020, but not enough to decide on what I want to do as a coach. And, I'm getting back to my full-time job here at U of I now. So, I'll take a little bit of time and talk with my family and think about it and think about what's best for us. But what I do know is I know that Tokyo is going to put on a phenomenal Paralympic Games. And whether I'm there or not, I think it's going to be amazing. I think our athletes are going to do a great job. So we'll see. Give it a little time, and then we'll make a decision.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. That was Coach Stephanie Wheeler of Illinois.
That was our own Ryan Wilson doing the interview. Ryan, you spent the summer here, sort of observing the preparations of that team and the men's team, wheelchair basketball team, which also won gold. What were sort of your takeaways of their preparation? Obviously, they really killed it, both winning gold medals, but what were your sort of takeaways of their preparation?
Well, it's interesting how over the summer they kind of all stayed in touch through Facebook messages and a Facebook group, because when school started, all these different para-athletes went back to their homes and schools and stuff, so everybody was split around the nation. But they stayed in touch, and then you have all these other games around the world over the summer, and they played Germany, and they played Netherlands, their top competitor, and they won all of their games except for one. So, although they went undefeated in Rio, they didn't win all their games
in the lead up.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and how many of the men? How many U of I? We mentioned earlier 3 U of I women on the women's team. How many were on the men's side?
There were 2 former Illini on the USA men's
Former Illini.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have any questions for Ryan while we run through this, I may as well shout out our request line, 217-337-1071. Call in if you'd like to ask us anything about Paralympics, Illini sports in general. Want to know more about Stephanie Wheeler. Ryan, of course, sat down with her earlier today, and we just listened to that. I think it is really interesting. BTN just did a documentary, a very sort of shorter documentary on Timothy Nugent, Dr. Tim Nugent, and what he did for disability resource education services and a lot of this stuff here. And I mean, none of that stuff is perfect in terms of could always be more accessible. I think the campus could, and there are some issues with certain buildings on campus and stuff like that. But it is a really interesting calling card that Illinois has this athletics program, both track and field, which obviously was immensely successful,
but wheelchair basketball as well. I think it's a nice calling card to have in some ways. I think because it stands out. Nowhere else has what we have here.
Yeah, I think to save us from going about an extra 2 hours.
Right, exactly.
There are always ways to make this campus more accessible. It's nearly impossible to make this entire campus accessible to everyone.
Right.
What'll work for me may not work for somebody else.
Right.
But as far as the Tim Nugent documentary goes, I think it's phenomenal how one person can go from starting a little satellite campus in Galesburg to what we have now. That he is the father of accessibility. Because of him, I'm here. Without him, I'd be elsewhere. I would not be on the airwaves right now.
That's true.
I mean, that is huge.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Because of him, I have this big mic in front of my mouth. And
That's
I'm
right.
chomping my lips away. But it's just terrific how parasports have evolved since it first started. And, I mean, Tim Nugent was the president of the National Wheelchair Basketball Association for a little while. And I think he would be extremely happy to see
where it's progressed.
Yeah.
On that note, when does the season start? So they kind of have this extended summer with the Paralympics. Do you know off the top of your head when they now that with a different scheduling how they start their season? Both the men's and women's teams play collegiately with a few other schools as well as against professional teams like the Milwaukee Bucks. Who have a wheelchair basketball affiliate. Or actually, I'm not sure if the team is affiliated, but it shares the name. But schools like Wisconsin Whitewater, Alabama, have teams. So when does the season start, Ryan? You got it there for us?
The season starts in October.
Okay.
October 21st and 22nd. And then in November on the 11th and 12th, both the men's and women's team go to Chicago.
Very nice.
For a tournament. Last year, in the fall, they had a home tournament here.
Yes, they did.
In Champaign, but they are not doing that this year. They are going to Chicago instead.
Interesting.
And then always in the spring, they have this big tournament here in which the band will come in the arc and like cheerleaders too. So it's a whole extravaganza, and it's a pretty good show.
There's Yes, there's a level of talent on that team, too, that you would not if you haven't seen it. So they occasionally hold open practices, I know, when they're doing expos at the Arc. And I don't know when the next ones are, but if you ever get an opportunity to do that, any of you listening, take the chance to go down there and watch that team. Make sure that you get it, because like you said, that's a unique thing. And if you're walking around campus and you see a curb cut, think of Tim Nugent. That was somebody said that, I think, when he passed away. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to think about it. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll transition sort of out of the Olympics and out of wheelchair basketball. And, it is the bye week for Illinois, but there's college football elsewhere. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, wrap up our show. Stay tuned, WPGU 1071.
Twitter.com/WPGU1071.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater. Ever so true. We love no other. So let our motto be victory. Illinois. Varsity. Secure your seats for Fighting Illini football today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI-1 or online at fightingillini.com.
Hey, this is David Kaplan from Comcast Sportsnet, and you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071.
Producer Will Gerard is getting excited to go to Red Lion after this, apparently, with his choice of musical selection for the bump. Welcome back into Illini Drive on WPGU 1071. We're going to talk about college football. Got a pretty good slate this weekend. You want to run us through it there, Jeff, while we while we're waiting for Illinois to return, we got some good games to watch.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Big Ten wasn't able to give us Illinois on the football field this weekend, so us college football fans will have to keep our eyes elsewhere on Saturday, which is tomorrow, I guess. All of a sudden, it comes up on you.
That's
so
right.
quickly.
That's why Will's playing that song, because it is almost the weekend.
Yeah, I'm ready to leave town. So.
It's almost the weekend, y'all. Exactly.
Well, looking down the Big Ten slate for tomorrow, there's a lot of games that I'm excited to watch. We spoke about it a little bit before the show, but there's 3 that I would particularly circle out after looking at that list. The first one is Wisconsin traveling to Michigan State. That's a number 11 team visiting a number 8 team. Michigan, number 4, hosting Penn State. That's another good one to keep your eyes on. And then Northwestern's hosting number 20, Nebraska. That one could be a toss-up.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting game, especially since Illinois and Nebraska face off next week. Just a reminder, you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1 for more information. Call us if you like. We got 15 minutes left of airtime. 217-337-1071. Ask us anything you like. Tell us what your weekend plans are. Keep it family friendly, I would say. But we'd like to hear from you if you are sitting around on a Friday afternoon and haven't gone to happy hour with your friends and want to chat. Give us a call. I think, sort of returning back to those matchups, that Wisconsin-Michigan State one's going to be really interesting. I mean, it's going to be is Wisconsin a contender or pretender game, I think, because they beat LSU, but I don't know. I saw that as that's a solid win for them, but that's not like Wisconsin is here and is a national contender. I don't think that established them as such.
Right, I agree with you. That's the first game of the season. I don't think you can really draw any conclusions from Game 1, especially when you're judging a team like LSU who came in number 5. How are you even getting that number, especially when a team's going to have new freshman faces on it? I don't think the pre-season rankings really matter, but it stands at that number 11 spot, and this week will definitely be another challenge for them. Michigan State's coming off a huge win last weekend at Notre Dame.
Yeah, Michigan State is and talk about pretenders and contenders. Michigan State is definitely a contender. No question there.
They're feeling pretty good about themselves. Yeah. I'm sure coming into East Lansing this weekend, and I expect it to be a close one still, just based off what we've seen from both teams. Like I said, we don't really know yet, just because Wisconsin's still a question mark. I think Michigan State, we can depend on them being a solid team down the stretch, but Wisconsin, this will be a yes or no, I would say, from this game.
And Corey Clement, with the leg injury, is questionable for that game, and that'll potentially be the linchpin to whether or not Wisconsin can hold it together. Of those other games, I'm going to talk about Nebraska. They're ranked in the top 25, so they're looking all right. I mean, again, this is like Northwestern trying to save its season. Northwestern and Illinois are following very parallel paths this year, it seems, sort of with the loss to Western Michigan and, losing. They're both 1 and 2, so
1 and 2.
That it'll be interesting to see sort of. This is Illinois versus Nebraska a week before it happens. If Northwestern can handle Nebraska, it'll be an indication of Northwestern's strength. But it may also sort of indicate to Illinois where its opponents are come October 1st against Nebraska and come all the way in November down the line when Illinois faces Northwestern. I mean, I think, what do we think? Is this guy sort of transitioning from games to players? Is this guy from Louisville the real deal? Is he a Heisman contender or a pretender? There we go. Contender or pretender? Maybe we should just call this segment. Is this quarterback from Louisville a pretender or contender for the Heisman?
Totally, he's a contender, especially after getting a big-time resume win last weekend against Florida State. I don't know how you can look at him and not think he's a contender. What's going to really make that decision, though, will be how his team's able to do down the stretch in the ACC as well. I'm not sure if they're facing Clemson on the schedule or if Clemson's coming into Louisville, but that could be a tough game.
Yeah.
That could be circled on the schedule if they're going to face each other. But early on, I say he may be the front runner.
Yeah, we're talking about Lamar Jackson, of course, quarterback from Louisville, who has just put up buckets of touchdowns. just bucket, or Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables. He's put up baskets of touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey's the other name that comes to mind when you talk Heisman. Maybe Deshaun Watson, of Clemson. A couple other names here in terms of the best odds. Jabril Peppers has 16-1 odds. Brad Kaya, Miami's quarterback. They've been playing hot. Talk about a hot team. Miami has been really, really good. And then Jalen Hurts out of Alabama. It will be interesting sort of once conference play settles out. That big win against Florida State, for Louisville. And he put up numbers, too. I mean, sometimes you get, a Heisman candidate into a tough game and they don't put up numbers even if their team wins. And I think I liked McCaffrey before the season, and I mentioned this, before we started, that Heisman voters are a little bit, have a little bit more sympathy for Great White Hope than perhaps is fair or whatever. But I don't know, if Jackson continues to produce this way, maybe he'll really seal the deal, halfway through the year, and it'll be obvious to us.
And I'm really surprised to hear that Deshaun Watson's name is still in the circle there of a potential Heisman. I think they're still hoping that he'll become what he was last year.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going that same way. At least he's showing to not be as effective of a quarterback this season.
The team is still really good.
Exactly, despite the team still being undefeated.
Yeah, Clemson's still legit.
He may not be the main reason now
why
they are having a lot of success compared to someone like Louisville now. When you look at Lamar Jackson, the team's putting up 70 points, and he is the reason for it.
That game is going to be great. Louisville and Clemson face off on October 1st. That's next weekend at 7 p.m. at Clemson at Death Valley. That's a tough place to play, but it'll be really, really interesting. You talk about two Heisman candidates, two top 5 teams. Yep. The winner of that game, if they run the table, is going to the college football playoff, no question. Win the ACC, of course, but definitely going to be in the conversation nationally. Really, and after that game, Florida State's the only other obstacle on Clemson's schedule. They got BC, NC State, Syracuse, Pitt, Wake, South Carolina. None of those teams are particularly good. Maybe Syracuse. Maybe Pitt after beating Penn State feels good, but
at the end of the day,
this is their biggest game against Louisville.
Is there an ACC title game at the end of the day? I believe so.
They have 2 divisions. Wow, that's a good question, actually.
Because that's seriously what it would come down to.
Yeah.
I would say if an ACC team's going to be in that playoff spot. Most of the races, realistically, within the big conferences come down to that final playoff game, the conference championship.
Yeah, I believe there is. Yes, because Clemson played North Carolina. As Lovie Smith says, North Carolina. It really swallows the North in there. It's just Texas accent. That's how he talks. They beat North Carolina last year. So that potentially, but it would be the Coastal and the Atlantic Division, and I believe Florida State is also in the Atlantic. Louisville probably is in the Coastal. Should know this stuff off the top of my head. I've never really been a big ACC guy.
ACC, especially when it comes to football. Come on, give us a break.
Oh, no. Louisville and Clemson are both in the Atlantic.
Okay.
So that's interesting. Winner of that game, then, is the winner of... Florida State is also in the Atlantic. Oh, that's right, because the Coastal is like UNC, Virginia Tech, I think Wake. I don't know about Miami. I'm not sure about Miami. Is Miami in the Atlantic as well? Miami's in the Coastal, so Miami is potentially the favorite. North Carolina, obviously, pretty good. We saw them take apart Illinois, of course, but those 2 teams are probably the teams to watch in the Coastal. So that'd be interesting. You look at the SEC, is it a busy weekend, really? It doesn't really seem like we're talking about the SEC as much this year as in years past. We had that Alabama-Ole Miss shootout from this past week, but Alabama plays Kent State this weekend. That's a non-starter. Georgia-Ole Miss, that game might be okay. Florida-Tennessee, you could argue with a couple teams ranked in the teens. But I don't know. This conference has not got the feel. Arkansas. Oh, I take it back. Arkansas, Texas A&M. That'll be a good game. 17-10, and that's at AT&T Stadium down there in Dallas. I don't know. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams ranked, but it doesn't feel like an SEC year. Maybe they're just being quiet.
That's the thing. I think it is a quiet year so far, just because we're out of the conference still. And once the teams begin conference play, that's when the football talk will really begin.
Of course.
When the predictions and the numbers and the rankings will actually matter, I'd say when the teams are playing true opponents.
Right.
But I agree, though. I don't think there has been a lot of talk out of the SEC so far, at least from up here in Champaign. But that also could be just because of the talent that we have right around us with Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
There's other teams in the Big Ten that we, as Illinois people, are thinking about.
Yeah.
But the SEC can never be forgotten. Bama, of course, Roll Tide.
Yeah.
Number one still.
They just are a machine. That's, Nick Saban is the Bill Belichick of college football. It's pretty clear. Speaking of Bill Belichick, shout out to the Patriots for winning last night. Of course, you all are going to make fun of me because I'm a Patriots fan, but there's a lot of similarities. Saban is actually a protege of Belichick, so I'm being goofy, but there is a connection there. Saban clearly picked something up because he wasn't good in the pros. He was not good with Miami, but he has figured it out at Alabama. And maybe it's, the base, the donor base, the crowd base, who knows. But clearly the on-the-field product is just so consistent and so good that team is doing something right.
It's just unbelievable to think that
for such a long stretch.
Exactly, and just to know that Saban's bringing in consistent just talent year in and year out, and this team is always going to be competing for a national title is just unheard of, especially in this day and age, just where it seems that there are so many competitive programs around the whole entire nation, east to west coast, north to south. So for Saban to consistently just get the big, talented players that are winning national titles and bringing all this popularity
he's
to
coaching
Bama,
them up. Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
He's coaching them up.
Something never seen ever before.
I don't think it's unfair to compare him to Bear Bryant, another Alabama group.
No, I agree with you.
He might actually surpass him in terms of championships with the track he's on right now.
Yeah. Well, they win one every other year at this rate, pretty much. Or on an average of one every couple seasons. Yeah.
It's tough being a Bama fan,
I'm sure they have. It's a real hardship for them. Other games around, USC, Utah. That's an It's a very game. I do think that Penn State-Michigan game will be fun.
I'm looking forward to that.
We didn't really talk about this last week, or maybe we did, and I have a memory loss. How idiotic is it that Penn State is honoring Joe Paterno?
Very.
When's that happening?
That was last weekend against Temple. They did a thing. I can't wrap my head around that.
It's a little contradictory, considering that didn't they take themselves out of the playoffs for a given amount of time?
They got sanctions handed down, and then the sanctions were prematurely lifted, and then I guess there's not a lot to that other than to just say, what is wrong with you?
What bothers me is just where the priorities are there in terms of wins versus, someone's kids.
Right. It's like really, really alternate reality.
I don't think you can deny that he was a major.
No, absolutely. You're right on. There's no, especially with some of the stuff about how he's known since the 70s.
He wasn't a senile old man.
No, we won't dive into it too much because that's a topic you could potentially talk about a lot. But that's enabling is all
just
over
really
the place.
Bumming
there.
Everyone out on that.
Yeah, right. It really make you sad. I mean, I don't know. What we should end on a happy note.
Yeah, I agree.
When we look at this weekend, we have some Illinois coaches in East St. Louis. Garrick McGee was tweeting out earlier today. They're spreading around the country doing some recruiting. When we look at next week, bring it back to Illinois real quick for the last minute here. Everybody, Will, Ryan, and Jeff, give me your word of the week. What does the bye week have to be in one word? Will, you think? You want a minute to think?
Yeah. Toss this over to someone else.
Toss over to Jeff?
Better.
The bye week has to be better. All right, I like that. Ryan?
Money.
The bye week has to be money. Will?
Optimistic, maybe.
Optimistic.
I
what
think
goes with optimistic?
Terms of recruiting here, you see the future, next few years.
Yeah.
That's why I said money, because they'll be exchanging some money.
Oh, you think so? Ryan's suggesting.
Oh my goodness, we're sponsored by the DIA.
Yeah,
that's right. Why?
It's throwing around scholarships.
Yes, that is true. Scholarships are worth money. There's no doubt there. I think my word for the week is probably forward thinking. That's kind of a 2-word.
So we got a hyphen there, or what are we doing?
Yeah, I think I'm a man with a hyphen in my last name. So Bailey Wells is going to go with forward because, you just can't get bummed down by this team. If you're an Illinois fan, they may lose 9 games. That's just what's going to happen probably if, to rebuild. So if you're forward thinking, you'll know that this weekend and this week is important for that and important for the future, which obviously is Lovie Smith's. That's what Lovie Smith brings is hope for the future. That's pretty much going to do it for us on Illini Drive. Hopefully you enjoyed listening in on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening with us. We will be back next week, as we are back every week, right in your radio, in your homes, in your cars, wherever you like to listen to us, in your ear. And we'll have football. We'll have Gail Gang, in fact, next week, one of the players from that wheelchair basketball team. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. For Will Gerard, Jeff Omer, Ryan Wilson. I could have switched your last names there. I thought about that for a second. I'm Peter Bailey Wells. It's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you next week. This is WPGU 107.1.